And in the speech, I said, well, we're taking the Capitol back, keep moving, take down the barriers. And then we left. We didn't go in. I wasn't even close to the building.
Wouldn't they go at you for that and try to find some charge or something like that?
I mean, Tucker and Candace getting together and saying, oh, this guy's like a Fed. It's like...
And then number two, anytime there's a critic of Israel who's resonating, it seems like you're trying to take him down a peg.
Dave Smith and Nick Fuentes discuss accusations that Nick is a Fed today in a long interview in this segment in a really interesting conversation when Dave is very straightforward about the two leading reasons many people have said that and accused Nick of that, with Nick responding and countering them. Let's watch this. This is going to be interesting. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
The January 6th stuff is where these accusations of you being a Fed have come from, which, full transparency here, I do not believe that you're a Fed. I don't fucking know. Who the hell knows? Everybody, you're a Fed. Everyone's a Fed.
Right.
I don't know who's the Fed and who's not a Fed. But I know that this was something that, Tucker had said, and I think you were very upset by this, and understandably so. I think that that's, it's a particular type of accusation that is, it's a very frustrating one, I think, in a way, because it's kind of like, oh, you're just, everything you said is undermined now, right? Like, I don't have to deal with anything. And I think that, anyway, I understand why that upset you a lot. But I think from what I've heard, a lot of this comes from the January 6th stuff and the accusations that you were encouraging people to go into the Capitol. So what's the deal with all that?
Well, it even goes back to something else, which is the Joe Kent story, which I brought up before, because... I was at January 6th, and at January 6th, I got up there and I gave a speech. And in the speech, I gave speeches at all these events, by the way. I went to the Atlanta State Capitol, Harrisburg, Phoenix, Lansing, and even D.C. And I gave speeches at Governor's Mansion, state capitals in D.C. before. And J6, we thought it was going to be the speech on the ellipse, and then we were going to maybe do something at the actual Capitol building, although I wasn't going to be there. But there were plans for there to be stages there. And, so like I said, I went to the speech. Trump said, go to the thing. We went to the thing, and somebody said, you got to give a speech. So I said, okay, find me a megaphone. I get a megaphone. I jump up on a thing. And we're like 500 feet from the Capitol. We're not even near the building. We're like on the street next to the lawn. And in the speech, I said, well, we're taking the Capitol back, keep moving, take down the barriers. And then we left. We didn't go in. I wasn't even close to the building.
All right, that's pretty accurate. Actually, he describes this pretty accurately. There's other things he said in the speech, and so that wasn't the full brunt of it. But in this speech, you can see this video on the website. He says things like, keep moving toward the Capitol. It appears we are taking the Capitol. Keep marching and don't relent, never relent. Break down the barriers and disregard the police. He basically hints at saying that. He didn't say the disregard the police part, but that's what he said. These politicians don't represent us. They betray us, and we are forcibly evicting them from the people's house. They should live in fear of the American people who they have betrayed over and over again. And he goes on, to say we are witnessing potentially the beginning of a second American revolution, and this revolution can take place, and I hope bloodlessly, or it can take place another way. But either way, this is an American revolution, must take place because our sovereignty, our Constitution, and our country has been stolen from us. There's more here too, but I just say all this to put this in context and say many people have said this about Nick because Ray Epps, who said similar things, very reminiscent of what this is, we have to go inside the Capitol. Nick Fuentes is saying break down the barriers. And Ray Epps got charged. Now, he wasn't charged at first. It took a lot of clamoring for that to happen. He got a very minor charge of disorderly conduct. He also did not go into the Capitol, leading many people to think, like, Nick has been treated differently by the feds than many of these people that didn't enter the Capitol but still got these disorderly conduct charges and other charges. So just wanted to add that into context. I'm not telling you what I think about this, but I think that there's a lot to it, and it behooves you to look into it fully.
And this video had been out there for a long time, and people knew I was there and didn't get charged. I got my money frozen, although I wasn't public about that. I got on the no-fly list. I went public with that, went public with the money later. There was never an accusation until like about a year later. And then people started to create this story that,
Right.
you know, that I was leading people in and I didn't get charged. Now, where it started with Tucker is with Joe.
Before he leaves, I just want to say, like, the clamor for the Ray Epps thing, you know, started early on. Like, hey, this is a Fed. Look at this Fed. We have all this footage, you know, of him saying we have to go inside the Capitol, including the night before when people around him are shouting Fed, Fed, Fed. And again, he didn't enter the Capitol. He did eventually get a charge after so much attention on this, and Nick didn't. Just want to clarify again.
Kent. Because now, like 2 years later, I make potentially Joe Kent lose the election. And Joe Kent was a close friend of Tucker's.
Right.
Joe Kent is in the CIA. And that is how we attacked him. We attacked him on that basis. And of course, it was in self-defense. He said that he disavowed me, condemns all my views, we're keeping you out. And I looked at him as very threatening because, like we talked about before, he's kind of boxing me out intentionally. So we made him lose. And it was a couple months after this is where I first got the inkling of it, Michelle Malkin, who's a good friend of mine.
Yeah, I know Michelle. I've had her on the show before. She's great.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
And she's married to a Jewish guy, so you can't be mad at her.
Look at that. Good woman.
And he's great too, actually. He's pretty based himself. But so she communicates to me through a mutual friend that she gets this really weird call from Tucker. She says that Tucker never calls her. Sometimes she texts him and he'll give her thumbs up, but they don't really talk. She says, but he calls her out of the blue asking about me and asking about Kanye. Did Nick make Kanye go crazy? Did Nick try to take Trump out at the Kanye dinner?
I don't think anyone can hold you responsible for that.
Yeah, you can blame me for a lot, but that's
no, this one rests squarely on the shoulders of Pete Davidson. We all know that. We all know that. You get your family stolen by Pete Davidson, you're going to lash out at the world.
You're going to get radicalized. Yeah. But so he's calling her, asking about all this stuff and about J6th. And she said it was very strange. Like, it felt like he was reading from a script. He was asking these questions. And she just told me to be on alert. Then I get a call from Anya Parampil, the wife of Max Blumenthal at Gray Zone. They're doing a piece about me. And she asked me about the Capitol. And I tell her the story. I said, I was 500 feet away. I testified. I got subpoenaed by Congress. I said, I testified under oath. I did not talk to law enforcement. She publishes this 3-part hit piece about me saying that I'm basically what Tucker said, that I'm here to make America first look bad, that I'm a Fed, that I made Joe Kent lose. The only reason I made Joe Kent lose is because I'm a Fed trying to whatever. And so I
just wanted to say I've read these pieces by Anya, who I respect immensely. By the way, she's a very good anti-war advocate, as is her husband, Max Blumenthal. They're heroic to me, so I have some bias, but I don't interpret those articles completely in that way, that they're total hit jobs. But you guys take a look for yourselves. They are up on the Gray Zone right here. Is Nick Fuentes the future of America first, or it's Kiss of Death? Judge for yourself, but I don't think that these are pure hit pieces. It does talk about some of the controversies regarding Joe Kent, but I definitely don't interpret it as a hit piece. So make your own judgment on that.
I do a big stream reviewing the hit piece and debunking basically the whole thing. Then I get a call from Bryson Gray, the MAGA rapper. Now he's a Christian rapper. He's working for a company called Influenceable, which they pay influencers to push social media campaigns. He goes, my wife just got a new campaign from Influenceable. They're paying people money to post the link to this article with the hashtag FedFuentes. And there's like a whole spreadsheet. It said, or a whole like readout. It said the campaign is Fed Fuentes. Post the link to this article and say these things, and you get paid. And someone posted it. This like state representative in New York. I forget his name a long time ago, but he was the only one who had posted it. I put them on blast. Influenceable calls me up. Please stop talking about us. We will take it down. We promise. Everyone's trying to broker this big truce. That's how, because I was pro Tucker. I was a big fan up until that point.
I don't agree with this based upon history. All right. Nick attacked Tucker quite a bit after the 2020 election. I believe in January of 2021. after Tucker came out on Fox News, I believe, talking about that he's totally willing to cover any story regarding the election and how it was stolen, any kind of abnormalities, etc. But he didn't see much evidence to lead him in that direction. He just said, I don't really have the evidence to conclusively think that this election was stolen, and he was a Trump partisan, and Nick fired at him like crazy. So I don't know that it's totally accurate to purport that you were pro Tucker until that point when Nick had a lot of animosity toward Tucker. And, you know, when Tucker started to come out, you know, more critical of Israel, especially almost immediately after October 7th, he said, we can't allow U.S. troops to go into that region, you know, make this into a U.S. battle. You know, Nick started to call him essentially a limited hangout. And you can look at his episodes from back then and some of his... he didn't have Twitter back yet then, but some of his episodes do, you know, yield that kind of narrative. So I don't think it's right that he was pro-Tucker up until this point. Just want to be honest about it based upon what I know.
And I said, So clearly, because him and Blumenthal are tight, he was fishing, because he knew Michelle, for this story. Blumenthal's wife wrote it. And that was like a coordinated hit job in retaliation for their buddy, Joe Kent, who lost. And anyway, so that's kind of where the rivalry started. And by the way, I know for a fact that at a recent dinner, Tucker, even before he talked shit about me in July, he was pushing that script to anyone who would listen, to other e-celebrities, to students, saying, yeah, Nick is this gay kid, he's trans, and he's a fed, and he's here to make us look bad. So this was in private, and he was kind of suggesting that on his show, and then he explicitly said it this summer.
Well, I guess he implied it with me. Because I heard people on Twitter saying this, so it was, you know, like, which I think I don't remember exactly the details of this, but I think you had said something that pissed me off. Not that, whatever, it's water under the bridge, but I think you had said something that pissed me off, and so I just didn't respond to it. And just like the way people were coming at me was like a little disrespectful, so I was like, "Fuck you, I don't have to answer this." But he said when I was on the show something like we were talking about Ray Epps. And then he was like, there's someone else who was on camera and he kind of put the words in my mouth. He went, as I'm sure you know. Yeah. And I did not even pick up on that until like people were showing me the clip of it. And I certainly never thought he was talking about you. And he never said anything to me about that. But then, of course, right, I did see with Candace where he did explicitly say it. And I think, you know, I guess maybe the thing about it is that it does seem, just on the surface of it, and I'm not accusing you of being a fed at all. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think you're a fed. But I guess just on the surface of if there's a video of you advocating people go into the Capitol and the way they were just getting everybody, and it does seem like, although you're obviously a lot bigger now than you were then, you still would have been a pretty nice scalp to be on their mantle. You know what I mean? Like, it would just be like, oh, wouldn't they go at you for that and try to find some charge or something like that?
Yeah, they found some charges for a grandmother, by the way, that had to wear an ankle device for this. And a lot of people got charged that didn't go into the Capitol grounds, that were on the periphery like Fuentes was. So I'm not saying for sure that means whether he's a fed or not, but many people did get arrested, charged, and convicted that were not going into the Capitol, as he cites as one reason that he's not a fed.
But is it the case that there's just nothing to charge you with, or what?
There was nothing to charge me with. I mean, they looked at charging me, but I didn't trespass. I wasn't violent. And
wouldn't that be inciting something?
But my lawyer told me I'm protected by the First Amendment for that, because it wasn't like the language was such that it wouldn't be. And also no one else got charged with incitement. The charges were trespassing, conspiracy, all things that didn't apply to me.
Right.
And disorderly conduct. Disorderly conduct was Ray Epps' charge, and you could argue if it applied to Ray Epps, it would apply to him. And again, guys, I'm not saying I think the feds should have charged him, by the way. I think all those charges were bogus. And, you know, you can't call it the people's house, by the way, if the people can't go inside. When led inside, when there was obvious fed entrapment all over that place that day, clearly so. And the majority of the people walked between, you know, the barriers, you know, peacefully. This was not an insurrection, most unarmed insurrection in history. But at the same time, there was some inconsistencies here from what I know. Okay,
all right, fair enough. You know, I think maybe, you know, it's like, and I think maybe this is partially why you get that rap, which I think is unfair. It's unfair to call people feds. unless you really have fucking detailed, like, I have the evidence and I'm willing to show it. It's just like, it's an unfair accusation.
Totally agree with that. It's such a callous and kind of cowardly maneuver in a debate. As Dave put it earlier, it seems like a way to kind of sidestep an actual argument. Like, I don't have to deal with any of your arguments about what you're saying. You're just controlled opposition. You're just a Fed. You're just a limited hangout. So, I just dealt with you. There's nothing to see here. But really, that is an evasive way of getting out of arguing over the issues. So that I totally agree with. I would not accuse anyone of being a Fed unless I absolutely knew. I'm just trying to provide as much clarity as possible, given what I know about this, what's been printed out there. And the whole Ray Epps fiasco went on for quite some time.
I think, like, when Ray Epps, well, by the way, do you think he was a Fed?
I don't know, to be honest. I'm skeptical, but it's possible.
Yeah, I lean toward thinking he was. It's just the way the Democrats were defending him seemed so bizarre to me. But anyway, so like there's that famous video I'm sure you've seen, everyone's seen, where Ray Epps is in the crowd and he starts saying, "We're going to storm the Capitol," and everyone immediately around him starts screaming "Fed." Now in that moment, they have no way of knowing that he's a Fed, but it's just like, dude, that's what Feds do. That's what Feds do. They come in here and do this. And I think the reason why you might get some of that is because in the same sense, I think there's a certain feeling of like when people are opposing Israel and opposing the warfare state, and then someone else goes over, it's like, no, and we got to attach that to Nazi shit or something like that. Not that you literally say that. I'm using these terms loosely. But like there's a feeling of almost like that. Like just like with Ray Epps going, hey, come on, man. That's what they're trying to cast us as, not as this. And I think the other thing, and I want to preface this because I really do, I am not, look, I'm 15 years your senior, and I do the same shit too. So I'm not like, I had, there was one with Dave Rubin recently, where Dave Rubin was just talking shit about me on some shit. Like it was, I don't know why my name came up. Someone asked him a question and mentioned me, and then he goes, "I think Dave Smith's a moron who doesn't know what he's talking about," and blah blah blah. And so I just publicly challenged him to a debate. Now, truth be told, I don't really want to debate Dave Rubin. Who the fuck wants to like, what is this even? But it's just like, I don't know, we're in this game, and like, what do you do when someone who has millions of followers is saying, I'm a moron and I don't know what I'm talking about? You're weaponizing your audience against me, and I only have one tool in my toolkit, which is I'll debate you. I can't fist fight you, like, so it's like, okay, so let's have a debate and we'll see who's a fucking moron. And now I weaponize the audience back against you, and he accepted but then refused to ever, he's like, a bunch of people have reached out. Patrick Bet-David tried to set it up. Charlie Kirk actually tried to set it up. It was supposed, Charlie Kirk wanted me to come debate, and I said, how about Dave Rubin? Because I know he lives in Florida, and it was right when we were talking our shit. And then he was like, no answer from him.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that happens, man, because Dave would collect another scalp there. It doesn't seem like Dave Rubin even knows, a remote percentage of the history of Israel policies, foreign policy in general compared to Dave. I would love to see Dave wipe the floor with the other Dave Rubin. And by the way, I'm Dave, so there's too many Daves involved in this whole thing. But Dave versus Dave would be awesome, man. I don't think it's ever going to happen for the same reason. I don't think the Ben Shapiro versus Dave Smith thing's going to happen, despite so many people clamoring for it, including Dave Smith, who's totally willing to do it. Ben Shapiro went on Joe Rogan and said, hey, yeah, I'll debate someone on Israel. I don't think he ever has. I don't think he's ever done a professional debate on what he is mostly known for, right? I mean, I guess you could say wokeness, too, is another thing that Ben Shapiro was known for, especially when he was coming up. But I've never seen him debate that topic with any, anti-Zionist dissident like Dave Smith. I sure would love to see it, because it seems like Ben Shapiro, for all of his guster, is more willing to debate, purple-haired college kids on that issue than he is actual consummate knowledge holders on that issue.
But so like, I get, like, if someone attacks you feel the need to attack them back. It's kind of the game we're in. I do think, though, when you're, it leads easy to the perception when you're kind of attacking me, attacking Tucker, attacking Candace, you go, well, what purpose are you really serving here? Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, it seems like any voice that's critical of Israel, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're going after. And then it does make people say, like, Do you get the point I'm making? It goes like, okay, so what? Number one, you're saying we got to attach all this toxic baggage to our opposition of Israel, and then number two, anytime there's a critic of Israel who's resonating, it seems like you're trying to take him down a peg.
This is my top criticism of Nick Fuentes. I have to admit, and I've said it in other videos, it seems like he starts fights with the most persuasive critics of Israel, especially on the right. It's not just on the right. He, has feuds with Max Blumenthal and Cenk Uygur too, as well. But he has, feuds with Dave Smith. It sounds like they're on better terms now. That's great. But also with Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. And there's been some others too. Daryl Cooper. He had a feud with Daryl Cooper for a while. Another very good critic of Israel on the right. It just seems like he pokes himself in to these people's business in a way that he's trying to take down the best critics of Israel. Now, I'm not saying that Tucker deserves no blame for calling him a gay kid in Chicago and such like that. I would argue that took place after Nick fired at him in 2021 or whatever, when Tucker Carlson said, I don't have evidence that Trump had the election stolen from it, etc. He'll have a different story. He'll say Tucker started that, man, with that Candace Owens interview a few months ago. But that's not my perception. But in any case, it seems like that's the sort of thing, if it were me or if it was Dave, I know Dave acts this way, is if he has other disputes with that person, he's not willing to try to take them down on the issue that they agree on. In this case, opposition to the Israel first mentality. And that's my biggest criticism toward Nick Fuentes. It seems like he inserts himself and kind of does things that we would think a Fed saboteur would do against the most prominent voices that oppose Israel. And again, I'm not saying I know Nick Fuentes is a Fed. I do agree, though, that seems to be a Fed tendency. That's what I would do if I wanted to, run interference in the opposition crowd that despises the Israel first mentality. I'd try to pit those people against each other. It seems to be what seems to happen around Nick Fuentes a lot of the time.
You get what I'm saying?
I do, and from the outside looking in, I get it. But I would say that with Tucker, it started before all that. It started before he was ever criticizing Israel. This was in 2023, at the beginning of 2023. Before October 7th. And,
right.
and Tucker never said anything negative about Israel up to that point, with the exception of one thing he did about the ADL. And, same thing with Candace. I mean, I supported Candace like I supported Tucker to the hilt. I had an account called Standis Owens. I stan Candace Owens. And we were like gassing her up during the whole thing. And all I ever said about Candace is that it felt like she was kind of blowing smoke up my ass about why she wouldn't do the show with me. And I didn't like that, after she gets all this clout, she's clouded up, she then starts saying it's the Frankists. It's the Frankist. And I said, yeah, that's not true. Like, that's nonsense. And even this year, she invites me on her show, and I ask her, I said, well, is it going to be a hit piece? She goes, no, I don't set anybody up. I get all dressed up. I fly down there, look into, she extended the olive branch, I accept. And she's motherfucking me about drama from a year ago, about are you racist? Are you anti-Semitic? Why aren't you married? All this kind of stuff. It wasn't a friendly interview. I don't even think it was cordial. I think it was basically, it was an attempted hit job. And, so like with you, I mean, look, we have disagreements and here we are talking about them. And I think I said during my show, like, I like you and I respect you, but I also speak freely. And if I disagree, I say something. And, these other people got to recognize, like Tucker and Candace, they're more powerful than me. They have institutional backing. Tucker is from Fox. Candace is from Daily Wire. They never got censored from anything.
That's true, but they both struck out on their own. They're not attached to corporations anymore. They just kind of go off ad revenue and individual donors now. But he's not wrong about that. I wouldn't say he's wrong at all about that. But again, I think his feud with Tucker goes back beyond 2023, as he purports, when he criticized Tucker for saying that he didn't have evidence that Trump had the election stolen from him. And as far as Candace, I don't have much disagreement with him there. The only thing I'll say is if you watch that episode, that was the interview between Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes, I don't think it was as adversarial as he seems to claim. About 2/3 of that interview was very cordial, and it's only like if I can remember, like 2/3 of the way through, that she starts to ask him about, his feud with Dave Smith, and, seems to raise questions about his personal choices regarding not being married, etc. And that seems to have been what set him off generally. But overall, that interview was not as contentious as I think he claims it was. But hey, I'm not him. I don't have his perceptions. He's entitled to his perception based on that interview. I just want to say what I thought.
Me, I never had any. They tried to throttle me in the crib. By they, I mean conservatives, from the time I was 18. And I've been banned from most things for 5 years. So it just, to me, it's like a little unfair. It's like when Ben Shapiro quote tweeted me with 1,000 followers. For Tucker,
well, that's something else. I mean,
I think it's similar. I mean, Tucker and Candace getting together and saying, oh, this guy's like a fed. It's like, yeah, well, you guys have millions and millions of followers that you accumulated serving the system that I was getting killed by for 5 years. So that's why I feel like I have a special license to attack, because it's punching up. But, I don't know what to make of Tucker and Candace. I would say, if I was being charitable, that there's immense distrust on both sides.
Yeah.
And for obvious reasons, because I'm an unknown quantity on the outside who, they probably don't watch everything. They don't know what's happening down here. And on the other side, they are exiting the institutions. So from someone on the outside, it's like, are you CIA? Where are your loyalties? What do you really believe? Are you concealing what you really believe, and to what extent? And so, I guess when I gave Tucker a black eye, so to speak, and kind of retaliated very strongly, maybe at the minimum, it made him just kind of respect what I represent. But I'm open to all possibilities, making up with either of them.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, I'm open to that too, man. At least I'm hopeful as a dissident that he doesn't, either start or continue feuds with other conservative influencers that are good on the Israel issue. I'm not putting all the responsibility on him for that either. I was critical of Tucker for what he said about being a gay kid in the basement. But what I'll say is, I've just confirmed in March 2023, he essentially accused Tucker of being a fed. That's before when he says kind of their feud started. He seems to be putting that feud mostly on Tucker. But he essentially called Tucker Carlson a federal agent or compromised figure and undermining the election integrity movement in his America First live stream. He basically called Tucker out for text messages that leaked out as part of a lawsuit, if you remember that story. And these messages were showing that Carlson was mocking Sidney Powell's fraud allegations as insane and crazy, basically casting doubt that this election was stolen. So that is the truth, and that is documented. You can still find that episode, I believe, on his Rumble show. It's in March 2023. I don't have the exact date, but this is recorded and part of several articles that have been printed on this. But at either rate, I'm glad to see him have a cordial conversation with Dave. They did have a few sticking points in this interview. I watched close to the full thing. I'm creating clips as I go on this and reaction content as I go on this, and it's interesting. I have no problem with discussions with Nick Fuentes. I'm just trying to convey the most information I know based upon the assertions that have been made about him and my own perceptions. And my biggest critique isn't that, hey, he's a fed. I know he's a fed. He's controlled opposition. He's a psyop, etc. I don't know that. But I would say I think it's fair to think that he's exuded a few tendencies that would be indicative of feds like Ray Epps on January 9th. But my biggest complaint is, creating or perpetuating schisms with other influencers that are really good on the Israel issue. If you're saying that, it's just coincidence that it's Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and Dave Smith for a time and Cenk Uygur and Max Blumenthal that he has had feuds with over Israel, it'd be another thing if he's talking like disputes over economic theory or differences on IRS policy or gun ownership or something like that. But no, he's kind of stuck it to these people on Israel. And I think that there is something there that's at least worth considering when thinking about this. Now, if he's open to mending those animosities, making up with one or both, I think that'd be telling. If he does that and gets away from this mentality, I wouldn't have as big of a concern about that. But what does it matter to me, or what does it matter to him about what I think? But that is what I think. But I want to hear what you think. Do you think I'm right about my assessment on Nick Fuentes? Is he a fed? Is he not a fed? Does he provide a legitimate explanation? Am I being fair-minded about this, or am I a fed for talking about this, by the way? I can already see in the comments, you're controlled opposition, you're a limited hangout, you're a fed. Nick Fuentes is the only one that isn't controlled opposition. I'm just predicting it. It's going to go down in the comments below. Just watch. But let me know down below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also subscribe to Dave Smith. Awesome conversation, great interview. Thank you, Dave. And if you like this video and my commentary, please consider becoming a YouTube member. You can do that by clicking the join button below. That'll mean the world to me. Your support means the world to me. And I mean that. So I'm going to give you, if you give me your support, I'll give you mine. You can have access to all my videos before they go live to the general public on YouTube. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.